Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Roundup Troy Radio, episode 467, coming to you on Thursday, December 8th. We're going to look at the Heisman Trophy campaign of Caleb Williams, the All-American stature, I guess you could say, of Tuli Tuipulotu, and so much more here on this episode, talking the transfer portal, taking your questions, and all of that. As always, you can follow Reign of Troy on Twitter and Facebook. You can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, we are there. Our email address is reignoftroy@fanside.com. I'm your host, Michael Castillo, joined along with my co-host here in the Reign of Troy studio, Alicia Dertol.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. We're back to talk in probably a shorter episode. Last week, was it? Monday went 2 hours.
You mean a normally sized episode?
Probably.
Yeah, because the 2-hour episodes are definitely an hour longer than intended. So,
what was last week? Biggie sized? Was it macho sized?
I would say like a 2.5-hour episode, which we have done in the
Supersized?
past, is supersized. So 2
So
hours.
you go with the McDonald's sizing.
Yeah, so let's go with the extra large. I don't know McDonald's.
Extra large would be like In and Out.
I don't know McDonald's sizing, so that's on you to tell me.
Wow, they just have a large now, but super size used to. Yeah. I'm a fan of the macho size over at Del Taco. Look at that.
Okay, macho. We do venti, the venti size. What's
I
the
don't
one
know
that's
what venti
bigger?
is. It just is.
Venti is just really
the
big.
One?
Yeah, it's the big one. But I think there's a bigger one than venti, but I don't know the name.
Wait, isn't it Trenti?
Trenti, yeah. So it was a Trenti-sized episode. No. It was a venti-sized episode. If it went 2.5 to 3 hours, it would be a venti. It would be a Trenti-sized episode.
But the tall is actually a small, right?
Yes.
It makes no sense.
It doesn't have to make sense.
Every time I'm on TikTok now, I see TikToks about how the caramel macchiato at Starbucks is not really a caramel macchiato.
Because it's not a macchiato.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really matter because it's a coffee drink. Like, it's Starbucks. Just run with it.
It's bad. That's what it is.
But
things are good for USC football, even despite last week, because Caleb Williams is a Heisman Trophy finalist. We're going to talk about that in the news. But before we get to that, we got to get to a review, which is not really a real review, but it's real enough. Alicia, tell us about this review.
All right. So our buddy Dan over in the Slack channel asked an AI to write a review of Reign of Troy, and he posted it. And then he did another spin on it, which he asked an AI to write a review of Reign of Troy in iambic pentameter. And this was the result. Reign of Troy Radio, how I love to tune in to listen to your host discuss the Trojans win. Their passion for the team is truly contagious. Their knowledge on the sport is quite outrageous. Their banter is light, their jokes are a hoot, their analysis is sharp, their opinions astute. They keep me entertained, my commute is no longer a bore. Reign of Troy Radio, I'll continue to support and adore. To which our buddy Marcelo said, that is not an iambic pentameter.
Close enough.
But I love it. So Dan asked, are the robots right about the podcast? I hope so. The robots will have to let us know in our reviews on Apple Podcast and all of the other, and YouTube and all of the other areas that you can review us. If you can come up with an actually iambic pentametered ode to Reign of Troy, we will definitely read it on the show.
I really thought I wouldn't have to think about iambic pentameter after being in college. Like I don't want to revisit it.
See, but I took Latin, and the Latin, like the epics are written that you're supposed to sort of read them in a cadence. I can't remember if it is iambic pentameter, if there's another one. I just remember the opening to the Aeneid. We had to sort of learn it the way you would properly say it in the Latin is arma verwinque cano. Like it's ba ba da ba 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 ba, like something like that. Each line is supposed to be.
Yeah. I get no patience for it. There's only so many John Donne poems you can read and write about, you know?
Yeah.
But we appreciate the support from Dan and our robotic friends, of course. We appreciate the support from everyone here on YouTube watching us live. As always, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the show. We'll be back next week again on Monday and Thursday here during the run up to the Cotton Bowl. Mondays and Thursdays live 5 p.m. Pacific is where we are live here on YouTube. But let's get into the news. Alicia, we got a bunch of it, and we have to start with the big one. Caleb Williams is a Heisman finalist. And he's starting to win a ton of national awards, but he's a Heisman finalist nonetheless. 5 p.m. Pacific on ESPN. We'll find out on Saturday, probably closer to 6 o'clock when they do the reveal.
Yeah, let's be honest.
But it's Caleb Williams along with Georgia quarterback Stetson Bennett IV, TCU quarterback Max Duggan, Ohio State quarterback C.J. Stroud. Those are the four guys. Quite an interesting bunch. I think that right now I can probably definitively say that it's a Caleb versus Duggan battle. Duggan just won the Davey O'Brien Award. Davey O'Brien Award is looked at as an award that sometimes tips off who wins the Heisman, but so is the AP Player of the Year, and Caleb Williams was a unanimous selection for that, right?
Yeah, only 5 times in history has the AP Player of the Year differed from the Heisman winner. So it's a really good plus for Caleb. He's the odds-on favorite. I think that everyone is sort of looking at it as his to lose. It would be Duggan coming in and sort of pulling off a surprise upset if that's what happens on Saturday. It could happen. I think it should not. I think Caleb Williams has proven that he has been the most outstanding player in college football this year. The way I see it, if you gave any of the other 3 quarterbacks in the running for the Heisman USC's defense and asked them to go outscore them every week, they would not have done as well as Caleb Williams did. If you look at Caleb Williams' statistical measurements, they are all up there, top of the nation in terms of touchdowns accounted for this year. Very among the lowest interception rates, yards, everything. And then he passes the eye test. Anyone who watched USC play UCLA or Notre Dame or Utah could see what a player, even on one leg against Utah, he was making plays. He was fighting through it. So I think Caleb Williams should be the runaway Heisman winner. I think that the only sort of debate around the Heisman that I have here is Stetson Bennett being the 4th of the finalists, which I think is everything that I don't like about some of these national awards, where it's give it to the most, the highest profile player on the number 1 team in the country, which Stetson Bennett is a very good quarterback. Like he's a very good, he's a very good quarterback for what he, in the moments that they need him, and they need moments that they need him to step up, he steps up. Very good quarterback for that team. They should be happy to have him. He's going to go down as arguably the greatest quarterback in Georgia history. Good for him.
That is a take.
Not
Are people believing that?
Yes.
No.
It's been said, and I had to write about it, and I think there's an argument. Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah. Yeah. There like Matthew Stafford certainly has his argument, and others who own sort of the all-time career records and stuff like that. But like in terms of achievement, he's going to be up there. But my issue with Stetson Bennett is if you took Duggan or Stroud or Caleb Williams and put them on that Georgia team, they would be the runaway 13-0 greatest thing you've ever seen. If you took Bo Nix or Michael Penix or Hendon Hooker or any of the other quarterbacks who were in factoring in for the finalists and put them on that team, they too would be runaway Heisman winners. And if you looked at the importance of a player like Bijan Robinson to Texas and what he's done at Texas this year, to me, it's Stetson Bennett is in here because of Georgia the team. Whereas these individuals, to me, like Max Duggan is and Caleb Williams are dragging their teams to the finish line. at this point. And CJ Stroud, when you
Bennett
watch him,
isn't the best player in his team.
No, Brock Bowers is a better player. Jalen Carter. I mean, I would have put Jalen Carter. If you said we're going to put a Georgia player in the Heisman finalists, Brock Bowers or Jalen Carter absolutely could have been in there.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
If you were Jim Harbaugh and you had a choice to ride with your quarterback,
JJ McCarthy.
Yes, McCarthy, or go with Stetson Bennett, who would you go with?
Personally, actually, there's a lot of teams in the top 15 that I think would ride with their quarterback. Michigan, I think Stetson Bennett would be perfect for Michigan.
Okay.
But that's because
I was going to run down the whole list. Okay, hold on. You're going to say that
that's just because Michigan's running attack is their strength, and they could use a quarterback that is just gets the job done.
Okay. Is TCU going to take Bennett over Duggan?
No.
Is Ohio State going to take Stroud over Bennett?
No.
Is Alabama going to take Bennett over Bryce?
No.
Is Tennessee going to take Bennett over a healthy Hooker? No.
Nope.
Is Clemson, let's be honest, is going to take Stetson Bennett.
But the question is, would they take Cade Klubnik over Stetson Bennett? And I think we haven't seen enough from Klubnik. I can't say his dang name. Klubnik.
Yeah.
But certainly if it was DJ, then yes, they absolutely would take Stetson Bennett.
Cam Rising.
Cam Rising, you take Cam Rising
over Bennett.
Yeah.
K-State has a couple of quarterbacks.
I mean, Adrian Martinez.
I like
maybe I think there's debate there for K-State, but
SC is going to stick with Caleb Williams over Bennett.
Yeah.
Penn State probably takes Bennett over Clifford.
Yeah.
Washington sticking with Penix over Bennett. Florida State, I don't even know who Florida State's quarterback is off the top of my head.
It's irrelevant.
Oregon State surely would take Bennett. They just need a quarterback anybody who has a pulse.
Yeah.
Oregon's going to take Nix. Tulane, I guess, would take Bennett over Pratt just because.
Would they though? Because he's apparently going to be the hot name on the transfer market if he decides to enter the portal at some point. That's LSU, the scuttlebutt.
Are you taking Bennett over Jaden Daniels?
Those are opposites.
You see what I'm saying?
Yes,
Stetson Bennett should not be a Heisman finalist. I think he's a good college quarterback.
Yes,
he's a
winner.
He's a game manager.
Yeah,
he's good. All of those things. The other three guys in here are so far superior to him as a quarterback. Max Duggan, CJ Stroud, Caleb Williams, I would take over Bennett any day of the week. And this is not to bash on Stetson Bennett. Stetson Bennett's going to have an awesome life. When college football is over, he's going to be able to say he was the quarterback when Georgia was at its peak and live off that for the rest of his life. And it's going to be awesome. But he's not a Heisman. He's not a Heisman candidate, not to mention a finalist. And Stroud had a sort of poor end of the season. I think we can sort of eliminate him. It really is down to Duggan and Caleb Williams. And it comes down to, do you value Duggan being undefeated in the regular season? I mean, sure. I think Duggan is a worthy winner, but I think Caleb is the guy. He's just been that much better this year.
If you gave Duggan USC's defense, he would not have been undefeated this year.
Right. Yeah.
Because as far as I'm concerned, Caleb Williams in the regular season did more than enough to be undefeated this year. He literally won games, and then the one game he lost, he's put up 43 points. I wanted the offense to score more, but in the end, what can you do when your defense gives up a 2-point conversion at the end?
In the final game that he loses again, the second one, he loses because of his injury.
Also, it was a 3-point game with 10 minutes left before the defense decided to cry uncle. It's, the Utah game is a whole mess, but to me, Caleb Williams, when healthy, was unstoppable this season.
Yes, and he got better as the season went on.
Yes.
That to me is a big telling sign of how you win a Heisman. Earlier on in the season, the middle of the season, I don't think he was really talked about in the Heisman race. I think it was mostly
Hendon Hooker was running away.
Hooker and Stroud were the two guys, and Hooker should be a finalist, absolutely, for what he was able to do. But ultimately, it's Bennett over Hooker for some reason, and Caleb Williams is there as well. So we'll see if Caleb can win it. He is the AP Player of the Year, the CBS Sports Player of the Year, the Bleacher Report Offensive Player of the Year. Those are good things to have. We'll see if he can wrap up the Heisman and become the 7th Heisman Trophy winner.
Eighth.
8th Heisman Trophy winner. USC history. We got a question from Cameron in the YouTube chat. Over under 0.5 references of free Reggie from Caleb Williams during the Heisman Trophy presentation. I think it would be pretty nuts if he got up there and said, mentioned Reggie and all that stuff.
No.
I have a feeling that it couldn't possibly happen. They would tell him not to.
I don't think I would take the under on the words free Reggie being uttered, but somebody should be in Caleb's ear right now saying, if you do win that award, when you go up to make your remarks, you say you are the 8th Heisman winner at USC.
I think that's probably the way to do it. It's just some underhand, you
just
count
say
Reggie.
8.
Yeah. As cool as it would be to just sit there and be like, I will not accept unless you
no,
that's never going to happen. No. And also I don't know that would go down well.
Do I think he should reference Reggie Bush in his speech? I think he should too. I would say I'm the 8th Heisman winner, and it is a privilege. It is an honor to come in to walk in the footsteps of Reggie Bush and Matt Leinart and Carson Palmer and the rest.
Then you can go down the list and they're and also behind me should be Anthony Davis.
Ricky Bell.
Ricky Bell.
For my day job, I was compiling a list of all the winners and the runner-ups, and it was just I got to that era, that stretch of years where it was Ricky Bell runner-up, Ricky Bell 3rd place, and then Anthony Davis runner-up, and Anthony Davis 2nd place, and you're looking at it going man, you lost to Archie Griffith, and
Archie Griffith never should have won a second time.
Yeah, it just
he shouldn't have finished in the top 3.
Those guys were so unfortunate in terms of the luck of when they had their Heisman.
How would you feel? Let's say Caleb wins it. He comes back next year and wins it again. Obviously,
pretty damn good.
Obviously, you want him to have the best season possible.
Okay, but USC fans should be dreaming of Caleb Williams winning a 2nd, because you know how Caleb Williams wins a 2nd?
I see being really good again.
USC is the number 1 team in the country.
Well, because I think back in the day, it was super easy apparently for Archie Griffin to win it twice. If you go back and look at the numbers, it's kind of insane that he won 2. But I think it would be the hardest thing in the world to win it twice now.
You'd have to. Well, why?
None of the guys have gotten close.
Bryce Young was set up for it, but the team sort of fell apart around him.
Yeah.
So that's what Caleb needs, is to be the number 1 seed going into the playoff.
Mm-hmm.
And that, obviously he's going to have a special year for that to happen. So sort of they go hand in hand.
Yeah.
But Caleb Williams does not win a 2nd Heisman unless USC is the number 1 team in the nation going into the playoff. That's my prediction. But I mean, he's got to win the first one. But if he doesn't win the first one, then screw everything. The voters are insane. We got a question from Jack in the chat. Do you think Caleb's explicit fingernails shortened the gap between Caleb and the runner-up, or perhaps lost Caleb the Heisman? Number 1, no, absolutely not. No, I don't think the fingernails have anything to do with that. If anyone changes their vote away from Caleb Williams because he's not a quote-unquote role model, then they didn't do their research, because Caleb Williams is an incredible role model to kids these days. He does active work in the community on the subject of mental health, on the subject of anti-bullying, on the subject of just everything that could go on in a young person's life. He is right there with it. No, if people didn't vote for him, then they did not pay attention to him. What I think shortened the gap is that he got injured in the first quarter of the Pac-12 title game and lost.
Yeah, but I still think the gap is there.
I think the gap is there too, but recency bias does play a role.
Yeah, we'll see how that comes to be. Again, 5 p.m. on ESPN on Saturday. Let's talk about the other USC player bringing some hardware home this December. It is Tuli Tuipulotu. He officially is on the All-American wall via CBS 24/7 Sports and The Athletic. He was a first-team selection alongside Caleb Williams. Second-team picks were Brett Nealon and Andrew Voorhees, both USC
CBS
offensive linemen.
This is CBS 24/7 Sports together.
Yeah, and honorable mention was Caleb Bullock. Notable opponent selections that you might think of. Notre Dame's Michael Mayer was the tight end. Over Dalton Kincaid? Are you serious?
Yeah, Dalton Kincaid wasn't a finalist for the Mackey, dude.
Wait, I'm serious?
Yeah, he was not a finalist for the Mackey. Yeah, this was controversy like a couple weeks ago. Insane.
No, I thought the big scuttlebutt was that Utah wanted him to be on the Bolitnikoff. He's not a finalist for the Mackey?
Let's just double check here right. That I remember people saying he's not a finalist for the Mackey. Finalists announced.
There's no
Brock
way.
Bowers, Sam Laporta, and Michael Mayer.
There is no way.
Dalton Kincaid snubbed. Yeah. Yeah. Now, I don't know if they limit it to 3, and it's like you're not going to argue against Brock Bowers and Michael Mayer, and I don't know enough about Sam Laporta, but if an Iowa tight end, maybe he was dragging them to whatever touchdowns they got this year, but Dalton Kincaid, not a finalist.
He leads the country in tight end catches.
Yeah.
Not a finalist.
Yeah.
This is why I hate voting and all these things. It's absurd.
Yeah.
The one that will make me mad more than anything is Christian McCaffrey not winning the Heisman. Like,
insane. Yeah. Again, get rid of the award. I mean, I could say a lot of things about the guys who didn't win the award.
Dalton Kincaid is not a Mackey finalist. Are you kidding me?
It's insane.
What?
Yeah.
Anyways, Tuli Tuipulotu. The national sack leader, 12.5 sacks, is a All-American, of course, to CBS 24/7 Sports and The Athletic, like we talked about. The Big Five haven't really come out yet. So the Big Five, off the top of your head, was it the AP, Walter Camp,
Sporting News,
the coaches, and
FWA.
Yeah, those will come out probably in the next week or so. We'll see if Tuli gets on those. I would imagine he has to.
Yeah.
The national sack leader.
Caleb is going to be a unanimous, I think, or very high consensus, very short of unanimous, if not. I think that Tuli has a very good shot of being consensus. If not unanimous, it will be interesting to see what those selectors do. It's hard to predict. You got to get all 5 of them. You can always miss on one.
We've talked about it before with voting. We've been, we've had votes for things. I just got an email about I could vote for the Ray guy.
Yeah.
I'm not going to vote for the Ray guy. I'm sorry. I'm if I vote for the Ray guy, I'm going to look up stats, and then it's going to be the most lame vote of all time. Just looking up stats. I didn't watch enough punters. I'm sorry. But
gonna vote for Caleb Williams.
But that's how the voting works, right? So many of those things are just people going by the stat sheet. And I think we talked about it before. I think it's easier to know who the best running back and quarterback and maybe the receivers are. Outside of that, it's who has the best stats. And Tuli leading the country in sacks is going to net him a ton of All-American votes, which is also why I think Caleb Bullock, he wasn't an All-American level guy for me on USC's defense.
No.
But he is getting All-American recognition in certain areas, honorable mention from CBS and 24/7 Sports. And I think that's because of the interceptions. Because when you're not watching every game and you look at you see him make the big play against Notre Dame, and then you go to the stats and you see how many interceptions he has, the most by a Trojan since Adoree Jackson in 2016, that pays.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think he was also a name that was touted around as a potential sort of All-American candidate going into the season. Yeah. So name recognition plays a big role in a lot of this. So that's just sort of the way it goes. But
see, SC benefits in areas like this, and I guess Dalton Kincaid doesn't for some
I think
reason.
Dalton Kincaid is getting knocked because 16 catches and 200 some odd
You
yards
take
came
out
against
those
one team.
take out those stats, and he still has more production than Brock Bowers.
Yeah. No, I'm not arguing it. I just think that's what people are thinking. Well, he beat up USC's crappy defense, so they're knocking him unfairly.
Tim in the chat says doesn't Thule lead in tackles for loss? No longer. Darrell Johnson.
He's second.
Has 22 and a half tackles for loss.
He
in
leads,
12 games, Thule has 21 and 13.
He leads Power 5 by a considerable amount. The next Power 5
Darrell Johnson from Liberty
is Will Anderson with 17.
Yeah. So.
Yeah,
and Jose Ramirez of the Cleveland Guardians is third with 19 and a half. All right, other Pac-12 awards to get to. Let's talk about the players of the year. Caleb Williams, Offensive Player of the Year. Tuli Tuipulotu, Defensive Player of the Year. Lincoln Riley, not the Coach of the Year. It is co-winners DeBoer from Washington and Smith from Oregon State. I'm totally fine with that. We talked about this before. There were so many deserving guys in the Pac-12. Somebody was going to get snubbed. It was Lincoln Riley in this instance. Shrug. I guess you'd rather have your players recognized than your coach, if anything. Sure.
Yeah, I made the argument for Lincoln considerably this season. I think it was a strong argument, but I also was not going to argue against DeBoer or Jonathan Smith winning it. So them getting a co-nod makes perfect sense to me. What DeBoer did at Washington was immense. What Smith has continually done at Oregon State has been immense. Credit to both of those guys. And a lot of the time with Coach of the Year awards, they do default to the guy who was most surprising. Mm-hmm. And so Lincoln Riley was always going to be at a disadvantage because people expected USC to improve the way that they did. People didn't expect Washington
it's the power of the
to
brand.
Improve. Yeah, the power of the brand. Yeah. It's like, well, of course you should go 11 and 2 when you're at USC, even though USC hasn't won 11 games at USC and no coach has won 11 games at USC in a long time. So
we talked about before the season, SC was like overrated before the season because they are USC and because Lincoln Riley is named to Lincoln Riley, SC started out very high. And there was a part in the season where it looked like SC was overrated, or at least compared to UCLA. There's a part in the season where you could say UCLA looked better by the eye test or had done more. But SC was rated higher because they started higher, which is all the gripes that people have about polls and stuff, right? But like sometimes that benefits SC, absolutely. But that means the coaches award is a little bit harder to win. The All Pac-12 first teamers: Caleb Williams, Jordan Addison, Andrew Voorhees, Tuipulotu, and Mekhi Blackman at corner. Good for him. I'm glad he's getting some recognition. I thought he was great as SC's corner this year. You want a hot take?
Best player on USC's defense? Well,
I
wouldn't go that far.
The third best corner of SC to play at SC this century.
Okay.
Adoree', Nickel, Blackman. Or am I wrong?
I don't think you're wrong.
The Pete Carroll era had some guys, but like I think all three of those were better than the Pete Carroll era guys. I love me some Will Poole, so maybe Will Poole will put third over Blackman. Sure.
Yeah. I don't know that I can argue too much. Blackman was reliable, and that's all you want from a corner. Like especially on a defense that got roasted at times the way that they did.
Probably some recency bias. I'm admittedly saying here.
Yeah,
sure. But yeah,
well deserved for him.
Second team, Travis Dye. Gets second team. Brett Nealon, second team offensive lineman.
Brett Nealon, Remington Award finalist.
There we go.
Second team All Pac-12.
Yeah. And Kalen Bullock, second team All Pac-12 as well. Honorable mentions: Justin Dietich, Jonah Monheim, Shane Lee, Taj Washington, and Max Williams. I believe the honorable mentions just means that they had a vote. It's kind of like others receiving votes in the AP poll.
And these are voted on by the coaches.
Yeah.
So we're still waiting on the Morris Award, which is the offensive and defensive linemen that are voted on by the players, unless they don't give that out anymore. Because that's the one I'm always really curious about. But yeah, the honorable mentions by the coaches. I think that Taj Washington absolutely deserves that nod. Justin Dedich deserves that nod. Jonah Monaheim deserves that nod. I have questions about Shane Lee and Max Williams personally, but also it's an honorable mention, and I do not care. Eric Gentry should have gotten an honorable mention if you're going to give those guys the honorable mention.
No, I agree, but I think they're yes, I would say that Gentry would deserve it over Shane Lee. At the same point, like I think it's interesting that coaches vote the way that they do.
Yeah.
For two things. I think that one, I think coaches can be blindsided by, oh, this is a guy who I know I wanted him in the transfer portal, so he must be good. I think there's some of that. But also you get dudes who like Jonah Monheim, he's not getting a vote for that. He's getting a vote because he probably went up against some defensive lineman who, like, man, was
like that guy
got worked one game, and like that. Then that coach is going to be like, well, I got to vote for Monheim because like he ate our dude up.
But I also think with the offensive linemen, it's hard to give the offensive linemen these awards because so much of it is the offensive line as a whole.
Sure.
And I think that when you look at like USC's offensive line stats, it's completely within rights to have all of USC's the guys out there who put up we're going to talk a little bit later about some of the stats that they put up. So a guy like Monheim also, you might have seen, one really good performance that the coach saw. And then they also recognize like, man, USC is the best offensive line in the conference. So, give all those dudes a nod, which I think is perfectly fair because they're all part of that.
I kind of trust the coaches more than anything on offense in terms of offensive line stuff.
Yeah, but
like I value the all conference for the offensive line more than like All-Americans.
Oh, absolutely, yes, because they've actually seen all of those guys.
Yes, they've actually seen all those guys.
Yeah.
Whereas like the All-Americans, again, we're sorting by
paying attention. Yeah.
By teams and whatnot.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to talk about the latest and how the world turns with the transfer portal. USC have had 2 players enter. One of them, I'm very interested to hear reactions as people listen to me say this. But one of them is Kobe Pepe. The other one is Jake Smith.
Who Jake Smith did not was at USC as a student this year. He was not with the team. He was dealing with injury stuff. So him entering the transfer portal might just be him sort of seeing if he can give it a go again after his injury stuff.
We had heard nothing. I remember searching like Google and Twitter and everything I could freaking find to find Jake Smith stuff during the offseason, and there was nothing there.
Yeah, because he was not intending. He was not going to play this year.
There wasn't even a report on that. There wasn't even a report on he's going to be a student this year, and that's it.
The clarity I got on that was just like the 24/7 Sports article about him entering the portal. So it was like, he wasn't with the team this year. I was like, okay, well now we know. We assumed that, but yeah, guys entering. Oh, the other one who entered, I think that we didn't mention, Jaden Williams, but he had already put out his intention to enter the portal, like Gary Bryant Jr. earlier. So he's in the portal, but
so the current list of Trojans right now: Jake Smith, Kobe Pepe, Raylan Goforth, Julian Simon, Taylor Katoa, Xavier Alford, and Jaden Williams. As expected for a team like USC right now, those are guys who probably are best served finding playing time elsewhere and whatnot, as SC looks for new bodies, as they still try to build, especially on defense, all of these on defense with the exception of Jake Smith. Raylan Goforth to me is sort of the biggest surprise because he was a starter.
Yeah, but was being the operative word there because I think anybody who watched the defense this year knew that USC was going to be looking for upgrades across the board.
Yeah, especially at linebacker. And Julian Simon, I really like Julian Simon and watching him in practice. But Yeah, he moved to rush end after the
So
injury of Romello Height, and never really got on the field.
so when he announced his transfer, I tweeted like I never really got the move to rush end, and Ryan Young of
Rivals.
Rivals
Yeah.
sort of tweeted and said, "Well, they needed a body," and it was like, yeah. So it feels like Julian Simon never got the chance to, because when he was recruited out of high school, I didn't think of him as a rush end type.
No.
So it was like almost like they sacrificed him for depth. Which
at the same time, I'm a believer that maybe I'm too trusting of coach evaluations, perhaps.
they're right there on the field.
But if players get opportunities, and
Yeah.
if you are not creating an opportunity, then things happen.
Okay,
right?
but
like you get moved.
Of the players currently on this list for USC to transfer, if you had to pick one who USC could ultimately regret seeing them leave this year, for me, it would be Julian Simon, because I think he could go somewhere and have a good career.
Well, especially because he has plenty to play. He has 3 or 4 years to go.
Yeah.
So he's got time. Kobe Pepe, I think, is an interesting one. I think that he could end up being one of those guys too. David Alford, we've seen what he's had, and he played a lot for the Trojans in 2021. Didn't see much of the field this year as he got sort of buried in the depth chart a bit.
Mhm.
Taylor Katoa has never set foot on the field. Raylan Goforth is a guy who's been around for 4 years, and we've seen plenty. And I think that he's a good player, but I don't know that
and contribute.
I think he's a good player, but I don't think he's someone that you're going to sit here and say that SC is kicking themselves, because if he ends up having a great senior season and everything, that's on SC for not developing him and getting that out of him. So other players of note in the portal, somebody by the name of JT Daniels, back in the portal, looking for school number 4. No word if the 4th school will be tatted on his leg as well.
I don't understand how this man has another free transfer left. How is he going to be able to transfer without having to sit out a year? I don't, unless it's like when they put in the transfer rule, it sort of reset the one-time free transfer thing, because he got the transfer to.
So the one from SC to Georgia, he had a waiver.
He got a waiver. Yeah.
This makes sense though.
So he got
a waiver, and then last year was probably the one free transfer to West Virginia,
and then
this one is a grad transfer.
Okay.
Right? That makes sense.
That would have to be it, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see where he goes. Oregon State is exactly where he should go. He was rumored to go there last season, and all the tweets on the day of the no longer called the Civil War was only if Oregon State only had JT Daniels, could they have won the Pac-12?
Well, I mean, I don't know if I would go that far, but JT Daniels, he should do one of two things. Well, he should do one of two. Number one, go to Oregon State. Just go to Oregon State. Just do it. Just go to Oregon State. Number two, find, who would you say is the best, not Lincoln Riley, who is the best developer of quarterbacks for the NFL in college football? For the NFL specifically. Like, go to Wisconsin to develop under like Phil Longo or something. I don't know. Find a quarterback coach. Don't go there to start, except that
you're saying don't go with Graham Harrell.
Do not go with Graham Harrell. Go find whoever is respected by NFL circles as a quarterback coach. Don't expect to start. You're there to learn for 1 year. It doesn't matter if you play. You're there to learn and develop for 1 year, because if you're gunning for the NFL, like you need to just accept that you've started at multiple places now, and you've had to jump from multiple places now. Like, either go to Oregon State and start, or go to whatever quarterback guru you can find, and don't give a crap if you're going to be the starter or not. That can't be the end all be all of where you're going, says Matt Castle.
I didn't watch enough of West Virginia this year, but the JT Daniels thing just fascinates me. 13 TDs this year to 9 interceptions. Compare that to 2018 when he was at SC as a true freshman. It was 14 to 10. Like his passer rating this year was 122.9. His passer rating as a true freshman 128.5, even better.
Yeah.
He was pretty good at Georgia, but this goes back to what we talked about Stetson Bennett. You can be pretty good when you've got that incredible offensive line and you've got all that talent around you that creates a safe space for you to be in. So I think Jaden Daniels can absolutely be a guy who, finds some success. But at the end of the day, he's got to find it, man. He's got to find it somewhere.
But not with Graham Harrell.
Not with Graham Harrell, certainly.
Who could have foreseen that not working out?
Yeah, I don't know. All right. West Texas Mike says that's improvement in the chat. Well, that's a perfect segue because we're
perfect segment for improvement.
Improvements
of that degree too, in some cases.
Yes, we're going to talk about improvements, massive USC improvement in 2022. Our topic of the day of sorts. Alicia, you put together a bunch of stats and talked about how USC compared from 2021 to 2022, and a thread of it over on the Twitters. What say you?
USC improved in almost every way. Just the sort of metrics that I was going for, which were mostly advanced statistics. In the off season, I do plan to do a very full, complete, sort of comprehensive comparison between what USC was in 2021, or more accurately, what USC was the 5 seasons before Lincoln Riley's arrival, and sort of average is something that I want to do versus this season. Just to get a sense of like where the difference for the program is right now. But for right now, we're comparing 2021 to 2022, and whoo boy, you knew that offense was improved, but that offense was improved. And it's noteworthy too, because it's not like USC's offense statistically was particularly bad in 2021. They were sort of top 50 in pretty much every category, but man, did things change quickly when Lincoln Riley got a hold of what USC had available to it on offense. So let's just go through some of these. S&P Plus overall, USC was 79th last year, 13th this year. FPI overall, that's ESPN FPI, 83rd overall, 13th this year. So that's a difference of plus 66 in ranks and plus 70 in ranks in those. On offense, they improved from 43rd to 2nd in SP Plus, from 58th to 3rd in SP Plus, improvements of 41 and 55 as far as rankings go. So the offense went from sort of mediocre, sometimes good, to full-time elite. The defense, I'm going to save the defense actually. Let's move on to offensive line, because I think this is really interesting. We have been saying for the past 2 years that USC's offensive line was better than people were giving it credit for. USC's offensive line was probably the strength of the team in 2021. They were better than expected in 2020, that they were sort of like doing okay. Like they weren't the problem the way that they had been in previous years. And that follows with some of the stats for the advanced stats for the offensive line. Last year, they ranked 38th in average line yards, 19th in opportunity rate, 19th in power success rate, 54th in stuff rate, 9th in sack rate. So those are all very good numbers. For those who don't know, average line yards is the sort of number of yards that is attributed to the line, which means before the running back is contacted. So if the running back hasn't been contacted, then in theory, that's because the offensive line has given them those yards. Opportunity rate is the percentage of runs that gain 4+ yards, which is to say the percentage of runs where the offensive line has done their job, because the offensive line should account for 4 yards of rushing on every play if they do their job. Power success rate is percent of rushes from within 2 yards that are successful. Stuff rate is percentage of runs that are stopped for, like 2 yards or less, basically stuffed. And then sack rate is obviously sacks. So last year, 38th, 19th, 19th, 54th, 9th. This year, 2022, average line yards, number 1. Opportunity rate, number 1. Power success rate, number 2. Stuff rate, number 3. Sack rate, 43rd. I don't know. I can't explain it. Someone needs to figure that out for me. But across the line, USC is particularly in sort of the rushing offense, like
significantly better. Yeah.
And what do we attribute that to, Michael? Where do you think that difference comes from for USC in terms of the offensive line stats taking off the way that they did?
I think a lot of it has to do with the scheme, to be quite honest with you. I think SC's offensive line is being put into situation like I think the way that the runs work are putting them in situations to succeed. And I think a lot of that is coaching in that sense, where they are maximizing those guys. At the same point, this was also a veteran offensive line that had dudes who have been here forever in Voorhees, Nealon, and Dedich, right there in the middle, those three, who are absolutely vital parts of the run game and just running right up the middle and being able to push and all those things. The other thing is we talked about the offensive line last year. The offensive line last year was good, compared to 2020, compared to 2019, etc. The 2021 USC offensive line, the entire thing that we talked about last year on the pod, for the people who weren't listening to us back at the end of the 2021 season, we thought the offensive line would be terrible in 2021, and they ended up being good under Clay McGuire. He really helped. Yeah. And one of the things was that we thought that Clay McGuire proved that he should have been the guy who should have been the hire as soon as they went to the air raid offense with Graham Harrell. It should have been Clay McGuire to begin with. And I think if that would have been the case, I think they would have been able to find some, better success early on in 2019 and 2020. And maybe that means a win or two. Who knows? But the difference is, SC gets an even better air raidy, concept-y guy in Lincoln Riley, who just does it better and doesn't just stick to air raid concepts. He's got, there's power run concepts in there as well. And there's a bunch of different things that I think puts the offensive line in a position to succeed, puts the backs in a position to succeed, because USC's running backs this year, as good as Travis Dye is, I think we can say they weren't as good as the backs that we've seen at USC in recent memory.
Ronald Jones,
guys like Ronald Jones.
Yeah.
Last year with
Keontae Ingram. Keontae Ingram would have eaten in this offense.
Man, he would have been insane. Yes, yeah. He would have been super good. So, I think the individual talent that SC has had before at running back has been better than this season. But this season's running backs were more successful on average just because they had an offensive line that were pushing huge holes up front for them.
Yes, and I would agree with you. So much of this proves that scheme matters.
Yes.
The blocking schemes matter, that fit with your sort of philosophy from your offensive coordinator down to your offensive line coach matters immensely. And this is what you see when you get things right and you have veterans that you can then apply to put into to get the most out of your offense. What does this mean for USC going forward is really interesting, because USC won't be able to have those veteran offensive linemen that they had this year going into next year.
Yeah.
But I think this was proof of concept, and I think Josh Henson, the offensive line coach, did a hell of a job. Was it Henson or Hansen? One of them is I think it's Henson. Josh Henson is the offensive line coach.
Yeah.
And the tight ends coach is Hansen.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Just getting that right. He has done a really good job of applying what Lincoln Riley wants and taking the talent that was available to him and putting them into position to do their jobs. What you would hope then that means is that you can bring in some dudes in the transfer portal and have immediate results from it.
Yeah,
that would be my hope for USC this year, USC for next year, because if Lincoln Riley and Henson were able to do that this year, first year with these guys, then sort of roll with it. But yes, the scheme is everything. All right, moving on. Last few things on the offense. Incredibly efficient. Touchdown rate, first this year. Value drive rate, fourth this year. First down rate, sixth this year. Busted drive rate, 11th. Turnover rate, first. We're sort of trying to move on here, so I'm not going to get into like the advanced stats there, but all great improvements from last year, which were still good last year.
I think the two biggest ones on those FEI numbers, in touchdown rates.
Touchdown rate, yes.
Like SC was number 1 in the country this year. They were 71st last year.
And that's the difference between an offense that averages 40 points a game and an offense that averages 30 points a game.
And remember last year we talked so much about last year and the year before, 2020 especially, was the year in which SC left all the points on the field. Well, last year I think is a perfect example of SC was 71st in touchdown rate. In available yards last year, they were 31st. 31st is not terrible.
It's good.
In terms of gaining the available yards, which means they're just eating up yards. And, our friend Trent has always called it the empty calories of the Graham Harrell offense. And
yes,
that's what it was. That's what it was. When you look at this year in available yards, SC was 4th. So, and available yards, if you don't know what those are, that's if you start at the 20, you have 80 yards to gain. If you stall at the opposite 20 and you gain 60 of the 80 available yards, that's 3/4, 75%, right? Like if you score a touchdown, it's 100% of the available yards that you earned. And last year, SC was gaining 53.5% of their available yards on offense. This year, it was up to 65.7%. And the difference is you end up finishing touchdown
with
drives.
Touchdowns. That's the big difference between
now. And not to beat you to the defense, but the problem with USC's defense this year is we talked about, the nature of last year's or the 2021 defense was just the worst defense we had ever seen in USC history, and it really was. But at the same points, you look at the available yardage, Alicia, that's not a place where SC improved. SC was just last year in available yards on defense. 104th this year. SC in available yards on defense, 111th. They went backwards, but as you're going to tell us, they went up in something else.
So this is the problem with the defense. Yeah. The defense improved in a lot of ways. I'll go over the ones where they improved. Overall, S&P Plus defense, they were 107th in 2021. They were 71st. That's an improvement of 36 places.
Yeah.
FPI defense, same thing. 107th last year, improved to 68th. That's an improvement of 39 places. The defensive line improves in several measures. Their sack rate goes up from 88th to 36th. Stuff rate goes up from 128th to 83rd. Huge difference. Power success rate, 123rd to 71st. Average line yards, 107 to 90th. So there is improvement. Opportunity rate, though, dropped from 69th to 117. So this defense was weirdly boom or bust, with more bust than boom. But except for the one big, the big boom was a nuclear boom.
Yes.
Turnover rate last year was a very sort of respectable 23rd.
Yeah.
This year was
good. That's still good.
Number one in turnover rate.
Yes. Can't get better than that one.
The other defensive big boom, nuclear boom that happens, USC's touchdown rate on defense in 2021 ranked 116th. Yeah, in 2022, 11th. 105 places. 105 places. Now, a lot of that is the turnover rate. You get the turnovers more often, and yes, your touchdown rate is going to go down because they're not scoring on those turnovers drives, but like it's not like they forced turnovers 50 times this year.
Yeah.
So the defense had a lot of areas where they improved. The problem being first down rate dropped 10 spots, value drive rate dropped 14 spots, opportunity rate dropped 48 spots.
Yep.
We could go through a lot of other numbers that show that the improvement in terms of the just base metrics didn't happen, or didn't happen largely enough, if that's a word that we can use.
I think that, yeah, you look at things like, for instance, yards per play. SC this year allowed 6.3 yards per play. They were 6.37 last year. They didn't improve, and you needed to improve. The thing that did bail SC out, and the thing that I find frustrating about this defense is I think there were a lot of good moments for this defense. The Washington State game, the ASU game in the second half, the Oregon State game, right? Like getting some key stops against UCLA, even though they gave up 45 points. The Notre Dame game, just controlling the game on the ground and not letting Michael Mayer's production get the best of them. Like, I think there's some key things that the defense did. However, when the games that went really bad, like both Utah games, especially the fourth quarter of the Pac-12 championship game, was so bad that it ends up putting the numbers back to the point where I think the narrative stood, which for SC was, well, they just get turnover. It's all turnover luck. And I don't think that was the case for a lot of the year. I think that, yes, SC was forcing turnovers, but they were still making key stops when they needed to, even if they were giving up a bunch of yards. But the end of the year, the sheer yardage that they gave up against Arizona and Utah and UCLA, all of that added up to the point that you look at the numbers and you're like, yeah, the only difference between this year and last year was the turnovers. And you've got to be better than that. And that's why, like, I think going into year two, it's all on Alex Grinch to fix those things, because the good things, like Tuli Tuipulotu leading the country in sacks, like that should be evident in how well the defense played, but it's not in the numbers.
Yeah, and that's sort of the biggest thing that the defense needs to improve is, yes, you've improved your turnovers. You got to improve your efficiency so that when you play Utah and only force one turnover in each game, that's not the end of the world for you, because that's ultimately what it came down to. Is USC forced turnovers in every game this year except for Washington State, which ironically was also their most efficient game in terms of preventing an offense from just moving the ball. But in the games against Utah, they only forced one turnover. And it's not like Utah is not a team that wasn't capable of having multiple turnovers, but against the elite teams, you can't depend on that. You can't depend on, Oregon got the 3 turnover game from Cam Rising. He wasn't going to have very many of those. So it's all about efficiency. And efficiency is the hardest thing to improve, because that means that you have all 11 guys working in concert. And that's not what it felt like USC had this year.
Okay, last point before we go to the mailbag to wrap this thing up is that I've had it in my head the last couple of weeks that the Notre Dame game was SC's best game of the year.
Was it Washington State?
Well, I think the Washington State should have been, but the offense wasn't amazing against Washington State. No, I thought it's the Notre Dame game. I was just looking at the yards per play numbers. The most yards per play that SC gave up all year was against Utah at Rice-Eccles, 7.87. Number 2 was that Notre Dame game. Never in a world would I have guessed that.
Well, is that because Notre Dame didn't have very many plays, and when they did, they were bigger plays?
The fewest in the entire season, yeah.
Yeah, because USC was getting off the field. And then
Drew Pine threw a bunch of yards.
When they gained yards, they gained a lot of yards.
Yeah.
So that sort of does track, but
still weird.
Yeah. Well, and again, this defense this year was very weird. There's a lot of conversations just before we get to the mailbag about whether or not USC should part ways with Alex Grinch. We have already said you don't part ways with Alex Grinch unless you have somebody ready to replace him. Jim Leonard from Wisconsin is apparently not staying at Wisconsin. If I'm USC,
That
I
would
ask
be
that
a
question.
big opportunity. Yeah.
But if it's not him, you move into year 2 with Alex Grinch, and you move into year 2 with Alex Grinch, expecting to continue to build on these improvements that we've seen. Again, to just go through, plus 52 in sack rate, plus 45 in stuff rate, plus 52 in power success rate, plus 17 in average line yards. Overall, the defense was plus 39 in FPI and plus 36 in SP plus. That's a start, but you can't be stagnant.
Yeah, and SC's got to get better. Absolutely. We'll see if they can under Alex Grinch going forward in year 2. Let's get to the mailbag and start with a message we got from Pacific Northwest Trojan. Is Caleb possibly sitting out the bowl game a good thing for the program overall? I kind of think it is. Great experience for Miller Moss as our backup, and I'm curious to see how well he does with a full game.
For the program overall, I don't know if I would go that far in terms of Caleb not playing. I do think it would be good to see Miller Moss. I do think it would be good to sort of get a sense of where he stands and some clarity too for him about where he stands in this offense, whether or not he has a future, or whether or not he should look at other opportunities for him as well. I also want to win the game. So I want Caleb to play in the sense that I want to see USC win a game.
Yeah, to me, this is one of those things where, is it the best thing? Yes, potentially. I think that yes, but it's not one of those best things that it's going to ever, like, you're never going to know that it is.
Yeah.
Until like you really know, right? Like let's say that, Miller Moss has to come in a game next year, and you just see like this was the you could tell that like the Cotton Bowl, really solidified him or whatever. Or the other thing is, if he shows out in the Cotton Bowl, maybe he goes in the transfer portal. Like you never know what's going to happen. So I don't know. I think the best thing for SC is to get Caleb healthy. If that's healthy by next week and he's available to get a couple weeks to practice in, great.
You want my hot take?
If not, then yeah, go with Miller Moss. What?
I think if USC loses Caleb Williams next year, we won't see Miller Moss. We'll see Malachi Nelson. So it doesn't really matter to me.
I don't think that's a hot take.
I'm just saying.
I don't think that's a hot take.
That's why anybody. I think that game would be huge for Miller Moss, because if he could show that he is a viable candidate to lead this offense. But the more I think about it, the more I think about what happened against Utah, the more I think if Lincoln Riley saw Miller Moss as a viable candidate to lead this offense, he would have put him in that game. And I'm not dogging Miller Moss. I'm talking from a skill set perspective.
Sure.
Is Miller Moss going to be able to run the run game the way that Lincoln Riley intends for his offense to be run? I
agree. I also think I go back to how difficult it is to take your Heisman winner out of it.
Yeah. Well, and we don't need to rehash that necessarily. I'm just saying I think Malachi Nelson plays if it's not Caleb Williams next year.
Yeah. All right. Let's go to Hoagie P. It says, when will we get the Roddies? Probably after
season.
January. Yeah, like after the bowl for sure. West Texas Spike says, what should we keep an eye out for with this coaching staff in 2023? An ability to adjust by calling quick, short passing plays when needed, refusal to stick to running plays when it's working, poor job of coaching good tackling techniques. All right, hold on. Let me go to Twitter and see what the Oklahoma fans are complaining about. Hold on. They said, okay, by year 2, Lincoln Riley will suck. Sorry, by year 3, he will really suck. By year 4, you'll want him gone. Okay, so apparently that's what you need to look for, according to Sumer Boy Man 69. So
when I tweeted my thread about these stats that we've just gone over, I had someone ask, so USC doesn't have really room to improve on offense then? And I said, like, yeah, there's always room to improve. There's always things that you can do better. But also, let's be real. Any complaints that you have on offense, any complaints that any of us have on offense are nitpicky. They're nitpicky. Well, when it comes down to it, you need to have your defense improve. and you need to have your offense be as efficient as possible. And we've seen what an efficient USC offense looks like. And if you replicate this year's offense next year with an improved defense, you'll see the results.
No, I think there's a lot of places you can still improve on offense. Consistency.
Yeah.
SC struggled to have 60-minute games this year, especially on offense. We talk about the scoring, right, and how SC was, scoring offense was up. They scored 66 against Rice, 55 against Colorado, and never hit 50 over again.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying you need to hit 50, but it'd be nice every now and then. So I think there's still an upward trajectory for the offense to get to.
Absolutely.
For much of the first half of the season, the offense was not at a perfect elite level like they were in the second half.
We're also talking about, yes, I 100% agree. I'm also trying to brace people for knowing that the offensive line should take a step back next year just because it was a perfect storm for the offensive line this year. The departures that there's a question about and all of that. Like the offense, I don't think you can go in expecting the offense to they were already a 41-point average offense, capable of scoring 50 points. Like there's marginal gains to be had on offense.
But those marginal gains, to Mike's point, are things like
absolutely.
Avoiding the ruts.
Yes.
So it comes down to play calling. I think it comes down to getting the receivers not to have as many drop balls as they had. I thought the drop balls were a big problem this year, and everyone but Addison seemed to have that issue. So yeah,
but I want to caution that there will always be there is no such thing as a perfect offense. There will always be things that go wrong because this is college football and these are kids that are playing this game. Like that's the reality. So yes, there are little, but like you take Lincoln Riley's flaws every day of the week and twice on Saturdays. So I will take that as far as the offensive coaching and offensive stuff is concerned.
Yeah. Fighting on MC says, do we know yet who has to be replaced on the offensive line? No, at this point it's Voorhees and Nealon.
Voorhees
that
and
are moving
Nealon.
On, and then you go from there.
We think that Dedich has another year. We don't know if he's coming back. I believe that Bobby Haskins is done, so that's 3. It would not surprise me if Cortland Ford was in the portal. I don't know why he didn't play more in the second half of the season. And let's see, Monheim should have another year. Mason Murphy obviously has a lot of time left. And am I missing somebody?
Of the regulars, that seems to be all the regulars.
The biggest one is Dedich.
Yeah.
You need to convince Dedich to come back because that stabilizes you quite a bit because in theory you have your center.
Yeah. Nick says, can you wirelessly pinch me so that I know that we really went 11-2 at the Heisman finalists after being irrelevant for a decade plus? That's the surreal part to all of this, is that you can sit here and be like, all boo-boo faced about the loss for SC last week and not going to the playoff and all that stuff. And then you realize they win 11-2. They're good. They're probably going to win the Heisman. Like, back in 2002, 13-year-old me would have been freaking out about this. For like I was in 2002 with Carson Palmer and all that. So yes, like this is incredible what SC was able to accomplish this year.
Yes, just objectively incredible. That's why don't let the Oklahoma trolls, don't let the Utah trolls, don't get the Oregon trolls. It's funny that I haven't had to say anything about the UCLA trolls because I think they're all just in our buddy Jake's sort of depressive, like what even is life sort of mode. They're not really out and about, but
it's basketball season. So
don't let those folks get in your head. Like this was objectively a great season. Then there's incredible things to look forward to. And one of the things I'm really excited about is USC adding another Heisman, eighth Heisman, huge deal. I need to get myself a number 13 jersey because I wore number 13 playing sports in school. So
13. I don't like the number, by the way.
It's not a lucky number. That's why I ended up with it.
Retired. Not a good looking number. Matthew Moreno says, what's in the perfect breakfast burrito? Let me tell you. Beans, cheese, and meat. You don't need any. And it's just a burrito that you're having at breakfast time. That is a good burrito.
Update on Michael Food Takes.
Breakfast burrito itself. Get out of here.
On Michael Food Takes. He has recently begun to appreciate eggs.
I do like eggs now. Yes. The thought of putting them in a burrito, never gonna happen.
I am designing the perfect breakfast burrito from Michael, and then I'll tell you myself. Number 1, eggs. Number 2, cheese. Number 3, tater tots. Number 4, steak. That's Michael's. I can tell you right now, that is Michael's ideal breakfast burrito. I will endeavor to force him to try it at some point. For me, eggs, cheese, breakfast sausage, tater tots, or hash browns, or some other sort of potatoy thing, and we are good.
Food should not touch. So why should I want?
You like burritos though? Like what are you talking about? It's burrito. It's the same thing as a burrito.
Regular burritos, breakfast burritos.
What makes beans different from eggs in actuality? Like it's the same idea.
No, it's not. It's different. Okay. It's just this. Tim says, how well has Vegas predicted the Heisman winner? Caleb's a massive favorite right now, and I hope that's a good sign. I don't actually know.
It's in Vegas's best interest to have that right.
So. Yeah, I don't actually know the betting history or how I would even look that up, to be honest. I don't know. Nick says, does Lincoln Riley fire Wilcox? LOL. I mean Grinch, and go after generational talent in Wisconsin's defensive coordinator. Should he? I think that I think the ruthless move. We've talked about this before. The ruthless move is yes to cut your buddy and go out and make the big hire. Will he do that after one season? I don't know. I think that's probably a little bit difficult because I think you can rationalize it's just year one. But, yes, that absolutely would be the ruthless move to get better, especially when the expectations at SC are only going to ramp up. It is absolutely playoff or bust next year.
Mm-hmm.
And that might be a problem considering the offensive line is going to take a step back, presumably, at least in terms of experience.
Yeah, I don't fire Alex Grinch though. I hire Jim Leonhard. That's what I do. Like, if you need to fire Grinch and then go find somebody else, you're doing it wrong. You should have an assurance already before you make any move at DC. That you should already know who's coming.
Yeah. All right. Eric says, did I miss your dog having a guest appearance? Yeah, after the UCLA game.
Was it the Notre Dame game?
Jesse was on. No, Notre Dame game. We're up in Washington.
Oh, that's right. It was after the UCLA game. Yes, Jesse was on.
Well, Jesse will be on in the future as well.
Jesse and my brother's dog Copite were almost on because they were sleeping back there. Like while I was working, they were both just sleeping very, very peacefully, and we had a conversation about what to do with them. And I was like,
it cannot be trusted.
And I was like, we could, I mean, at this point, the way that they're sleeping, we could literally just record an episode. And then you brought up the very good point that like when they're not sleeping, they could wake up during the episode and then we'd have problems because they are raucous.
Oh, just a little bit. So, all right, that's gonna be this episode. We'll be back on Monday to talk more about whether or not Caleb Williams did become the 8th Heisman Trophy winner in USC football history. Talk a little bit more portal, maybe look ahead to the Cotton Bowl a little bit, and so much more. As always, if you got emails and want to email us, reignoftroy@fanside.com is how you can do that. Be sure to like this video if you're watching us on YouTube right now. Like it right now. Be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you on Monday. Until then, see ya.
One last thing, Caleb Williams has won the Maxwell Award.
PFF no Walter Camp too, right?
PFF. I haven't seen Walter Camp. I've seen Maxwell.
No.
PFF College says 7 of the last 8 Maxwell Award winners have gone on to win the Heisman Trophy.
Who's the exception?
I don't know.
I bet it's McCaffrey. He got robbed.
Are you willing to stay on the air while I look this up?
You got 3 seconds.
Well, Google's not loading that quickly. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, here we go. Bryce Young, Devontae Smith, yes. Joe Burrow, yes. Tua Tagovailoa, yes. Baker.
No, Tua, no. There you go.
It's 2018 Tua. Was not Tua?
Tua never won the Heisman.
Oh, okay. So it was Tua.
There you go.
Okay, there you go.
All right. Until then, we'll see ya.
See ya.